What's going on, everybody? It's your boy, Matt Burrill, here to tell you guys about my friends from Big Friendly Productions. Now, they specialize in creating merchandise for bands, artists, and even lifestyle brands. With their in-house equipment, they can provide shirts, branded hats, and more, as well as some graphic design services. They offer order fulfillment to handle your online orders and ship your merch straight to your fans from their shop down in good old Birmingham, Alabama, baby. Now, whether you are getting your first shirt, you're just starting out, or you're going on a 40-show run, hit them up for all your merchandising needs. Check out their website, bigfriendlyproductions.com, or shoot them an email, merchandising@bigfriendlyproductions.com. Now, we're going to get into the episode. This is Outside the Round with Matt Burrill. Also, make sure you guys like, rate, subscribe, tell your mama and them. And for more details and to get in touch with the rest of the familia, visit raisrowdy.com. Now, let's get into it. Outside the Round with me, Matt Burrill, a Raise Rowdy podcast.
This is Outside the Round with Matt Burrill, a Raise Rowdy podcast.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Outside the Round with me, Matt Burrill. Today, a very special episode. I told you guys when we were rebranding from In the Round to Outside the Round, we were going to have folks across all different styles of life, not just performers and songwriters and musicians and artists and things like that, but having folks that are in the music industry, outside the music industry. And today we've got a guy that I've gotten to know over the last few years who's been a huge part of the music scene in country and rock for a very long time and is associated with a lot of big acts that you guys are very familiar with that are doing big things in the country scene now and have been for a long time. Very honored to be with the man behind the core entertainment, our man Chief. And your name it's Kevin, right?
It is, but you're making me sound very old.
Very old? I've
been around for a long time. I'm not young. I'm okay with it.
How old? You can't be that old, right?
I just turned 50.
Yeah, that's not old, dude. Well, congrats on 50th. That's freaking cool.
Okay, thank you. I'll take it.
Yeah, so, I mean, but now, if you're 50 now and you've been around the music thing for so long, when did you get into it?
I mean, look, it was right when I graduated, so 18, and I knew I wanted to do music, and I instantly fell in love with the idea of actually becoming a producer engineer. That was my first love. So
wow.
Up in Vancouver, I went to recording school for 2 years to become what I thought was going to be a career in engineering and producing, and that's actually where I met Nickelback. I was interning at a studio up there, and they had just moved there from Alberta. They were 4 young kids that no one knew who they were, and one of the first sessions I ever did in my life was recording this band called Nickelback, and recorded some songs. And at that time, there's a massive live music scene in Vancouver. So every band that was coming through the studio was also playing every weekend. So they would just be like, hey, you want to come do our live sound for us? And I didn't know how to do live sound, but I knew how to work the gear.
Yeah.
So you just go start mixing, and you just kind of figured it out. And, I got to mix a lot of great bands. I got to go on tour with a couple of the bands. One of the first tours I ever did was a band that opened up for Powerman 5000 and Kid Rock.
Yeah.
And then the next tour I went was a local band opening up for Motley Crue. So I kind of got a really good taste of the road, and I really started to fall in love with the live sound and tour manager. And then Nickelback got signed, and they asked me to be their sound engineer and tour manager, and I was with them for almost 15 years.
Wow. See, I had no idea you had the production background. It makes sense having the ear for it, because I've known you since I've known you. It's more I've known you being the guy on the business side, which you transitioned to. And
no, I loved it. Look, I got to learn about radio and about promotion and marketing and record labels and publishing, and then got to sit in the studio for 7 records with Nickelback and watch Joey Moi make great records and Mutt Lange come in and do a record with him. So it was constantly like going to school. I just got to learn and make a lot of mistakes as I went along, but without those mistakes being so costly that I lost my job because I was with, Nickelback was making mistakes as well. We were just trying to figure it out as we went. And it just kind of kept, we started in a van and then it kind of like, we were just grinding, got a bus. Then we got a trailer, then we got some gear, then we got some lights. And then How You Remind Me came out and we went overnight. I mean, all of a sudden it was like world tour and I don't know, 8 trucks, 8 buses, 40, 50 crew. And all of a sudden it's just like, oh, we're doing it. We're doing this thing.
We're not in the clubs no more.
We're not in the clubs anymore. And then you had to learn that jump, like from clubs to theaters to arenas. And all of a sudden it's like, oh, this is big. But I loved it. I loved every second of it. And it turned out pretty good. We had a good 10-year run.
Yeah, my first, the first CD, the 2 CDs that I remember buying as a kid at Target were All the Right Reasons was like my first CD. That and Kenny Chesney's No Shoes, No Shirt, No Problems.
Those are two great ones.
And I remember just listening, like that was the soundtrack to my childhood was Nickelback. And obviously wasn't old enough to like remember like going to shows. Like my first Nickelback show was this year, which was the show at Bridgestone, man. I mean, how does it feel to be back with the guys, to be a part of this reunion, like, and seeing the shows that are like, I know Boots and Hearts was just this past weekend.
Yeah,
it was freaking crazy. And then to have a guy like Josh Ross, who you've been investing a lot of time in for a long time, and taken under your wing, and have him out on the tour as well. Like,
yeah, it's sometimes it's like surreal because it seemed so natural and so easy when the guys decided to look for new management, and when we all got in a room and we were like, this just feels right. It just feels like this is so natural. They're like my brothers. We grew up together. So it was like, yeah, let's just do this. But then when you remove yourself from the situation, you're like, wait, here's the band I started with like 25 years ago as like their sound guy. And now we get to manage them. So it's a little bit surreal at times, but look, it's been great. We have such a great relationship. And when we agree to work together, our whole goal was like, try some different things, right? Let's shake it up a little. There was, I think, a moment where a lot of the industry was like, Nickelback's either done or they're just going to rinse and repeat, And we came in and we were like, guys, we know in Nashville and in country, you guys are big.
Yeah.
You guys are like, I know that Morgan Wallen's a fan, Hardy's a fan, Bailey's a fan, Josh is a fan, Nate's like, everyone we talk to, they're like, we love Nickelback. We grew up on Nickelback. We learned how to write songs because of Chad. So it was such an easy thing for us to see and such a hard thing for them to see because they had never spent a lot of time in Nashville, where the country scene, to be like, wait, all of those guys like us and they like our music. And we're like, yeah, like all of them. Brantley, Jelly Roll, all of them, they love it. So we just said, all we got to do is connect the dots. And your guys' music isn't that far off from what country rock has become. And so when we went to them and we said, hey, let's look at a Brantley Gilbert. And what about our guy, Josh Ross? And they kind of just trusted. And they're like, if you guys think this is a good move and a smart move, we are down. And we were like, yes, we think this is a good move. And it's their biggest selling tour since 2010, and they're having a blast. And they are now seeing that the country fans are Nickelback fans.
Yeah.
And it's this younger generation that is just discovering Nickelback, and they're like, we love your music. And then, of course, they still have the diehard Nickelback fans. So it's kind of been the perfect combination that we hoped it was going to be. And it's turned out great.
And a badass record to tour off of. Like,
and
coming back, putting out a record and hitting the road.
And they still put out great music.
Yeah.
They really do. So it's been great. It's really a family atmosphere. They quickly bonded with Brantley. They loved Chad's really taken Josh under his wing of like teaching him, hey, you got a big career ahead of yourselves, but here's going to be some pitfalls, and here's some things I learned along the way and want to pass to you. And it's great. He's really, he's like his older brother out there. It's really, it's cool to watch.
That's awesome. Yeah. And it's like, you see elements of, we refer to it as butt rock, the nothing but rock radio generation. And we do a lot with that with Raised Rowdy. We have our butt rock night account. We posts a lot of stuff about Nickelback, about Creed, about Seether, Saliva, Limp Bizkit, bands from that era, and you can hear the sounds of that era coming back in country with guys like Hardy. I mean, you were part of that transition too. With I feel like FGL was kind of the bridge between that.
Yeah, look, it was if and some people don't know this, but how I even ended up from Vancouver to Nashville is because of Nickelback, because I was managing Joey Moi, who's Nickelback's producer.
Oh, I didn't know you were Joey's manager.
I was Joey's manager for 5-6 years, and Joey and I got a call from Seth at Big Loud saying, I have an artist in Nashville who loves Nickelback, loves Joey's production and mixing. Would Joey consider doing a song? And we're like, of course, like, why not? So they sent a song to Vancouver. Joey mixed it, sent it back. They go, we love it. Will Joey come to Nashville and actually work on some music? And we're like, yeah, of course. So right before Joey was going to come to Nashville, Seth was like, hey, I was still out with Nickelback at the time. And he's like, Nickelback's playing Atlanta. Seth is like, I want to bring some of my writers to meet Chad. They love Chad. I was like, great. So Seth, Rodney Clausen, Chris Tompkins, and Craig Wiseman all came out to see Nickelback.
What a crew.
In Atlanta. And we all just hit it off and got along. And Seth was like, does Joey still want to come to Nashville? And we're like, yeah. So we set up some dates. Joey came to Nashville. He spent a couple of weeks in the studio and ended up doing 8 songs, mixing, producing, and co-writing most of the record. Mixed the album, and it was Jake Owen's Barefoot Blue Jean Night. And if you listen to that record, you will hear a massive amount of Nickelback elements that were brought into that, because that's what Joey did, and did it very well. And it was perceived as such a new, refreshing sound in Nashville. And it was, because nobody was doing the rock elements like Joey was. So Joey did that, and Joey never left. Literally never went back to Vancouver, because at that time, myself, Joey, and Chad had a production company, and we were working together developing rock bands. And we had bands like, Joey and Chad did Theory of a Dead Man, they did A Fault, and then we did My Darkest Days, and we were just developing rock bands. And we developed. Like, we were like, this is how you write a song. This is how you play live.
Going to
take
school.
Vocal lessons, take guitar lessons. This is how you need to look. Like, we would spend a year developing a band and then go shop them and get a deal. So when we finished the Jake Owen project, Seth and Craig had approached Joey and myself saying, hey, you guys develop bands. Nobody does that in Nashville. Would you guys want to do that? We have a publishing company. We have a studio. You're a manager, you're a producer, we can kind of do this pretty easy. And we're like, sure, let's do it. And they're just like, no way does it here. So we all put $20,000 each into a pot. We had 80 grand, and we go, let's go sign an artist. And Seth at the time was like, hey, I don't know if they're going to be great artists, but I know they're great songwriters because they're getting cuts in town. He's like, they're playing a show. They do a bunch of covers. We should go see them. So we went downtown to a show, and it was Brian and Tyler. It was Florida Georgia Line. And, the show was rough, but great energy. We loved the way the two of them worked together. And we're like, I don't know, this just feels right. And there wasn't really a country duo at that time. Brooks and Dunn were done.
Yeah.
So we said, great. So we brought them in. We signed them to publishing and management. We gave them enough money so they could quit their jobs. They were both painting homes at the time.
Wow.
And we're like, let's just get you guys writing songs and doing the thing. Let's get you guys looking good, playing good, singing good, writing good. Let's get you guys doing some weekend shows. Let's, like, all the things to develop. So we did all those things, and they went in the studio with Joey, and they wrote Cruise. And Chase Rice was also a co-writer on that song. And we got Cruise, and then we got Round Here, and then we got Shine On, and we were like, we're all ecstatic. And we shopped that band around Nashville, and everybody hated it.
Because it was so different. Nashville wasn't ready.
It was too different. It was too rock. And they're like, wait, there's some Canadian producer from Nickelback is producing country music. Their manager's this Canadian guy who was out on the road with Nickelback. Like, no one wanted to touch it. They're like, you guys are trying to come and mess our system up, and we're not having it. So we then released it independently, And on iTunes, it just went like 2,000 singles a week, and then 5,000, and then 10,000, and then 20,000. And now we're making money. We've like recouped our 100 grand, and we're making money. The guys are now making money, and still nobody wanted it. They would not touch it. And just a weird turn of events of how the world works is in 2005, when I was with Nickelback and started managing another rock band, a rock band called Hinder.
Oh yeah.
They were signed to Republic, Universal Republic, to a guy by the name of Tom Mackay. So all of a sudden now FGL is like all over iTunes, and they're selling, and no one in Nashville wants him. And Tom Mackay calls me and he goes, I heard you manage his country act, Florida Georgia Line. He's like, we want to sign him. Like we can see what's going on. And I'm like, well, we need a Nashville country-based label. And he's like, we, being Republic, have a deal with Scott Borchetta at Big Machine that if we sign an act, he has to work it because we're working Taylor Swift at pop radio. So they had this kind of back and forth thing. And I'm like, fair, but I don't think Scott wants it.
No.
Right?
Or else he would have come out and said, I want it. Yeah.
And they were like, well, we think Scott will like this, and we think Scott will like to make money. And we're the ones signing it, so we'll be okay. So we did the deal with Universal Republic, and I don't know, a year and a half, 2 years into the deal, Scott just bought the rights back from Republic, and then FGL was solely on Big Machine for 12 years.
Yeah. That's wild, man. Who would have thought? So technically, I mean, you look at the structure of of Taylor Swift crossing over to pop, brings over lines that it's just wild, like all the pieces. And I didn't know you worked with Hinder and Theory and all those bands too, man.
Yeah, it was interesting because in 2005, Nickelback was like, hey, we're taking a year off. Like, we're just off. We're fried. We've been on the road for 10 years.
Oh, they went nonstop. Yeah.
Straight.
Yeah.
I think it was like 6 albums in 10 years. It was, and at that time you're doing, I think Chad reminded us the other day, the first year they did 270 some shows.
How do you, that's
right. And
at a high level too.
Never lost his voice, and we never canceled, and then, so, even in a slow year, we're doing 100 shows. So after 10 years, everyone's fried. So the guys always took care of me, but there's a moment where I was like, well, what's my next? I'm touring with one of the biggest rock bands. I'm doing front of house. I'm doing tour manager. We have traveled the world. We've been to Europe. We've been to Russia, Dubai, Abu Dhabi, Australia, Mexico, you name it. So I'm kind of sitting there like, what's next for me? I didn't want to be the guy that was doing this for the next 20 years. And they're like, hey, we're taking a year off. Like, if you want to go be a manager, like, go manage a band. So I'm like, okay. So as that turned out, this band wanted to work with Joey Moi, and they're from Oklahoma, and it was Hinder. So they got in an RV. They drove from Oklahoma to Vancouver. They recorded with Joey. I hung out with them. We started talking about, like, you're a new band. I'm a tour manager, never managed, but I think you guys are great. And they're like, oh, we'd love to work with you. They're like, we're doing a show in Oklahoma. Why don't you come and see it? So I flew down to Oklahoma, and it was just one of those things at that time where, like, I get in a cab and I, like, go to the club, and I see like 300, 400, 500 people lined up outside this club. And I'm like, oh, damn, like, this is something, and the radio station van's parked outside, and it's the whole thing. And I'm like, oh, this is crazy. Like, this is a great sign. And the club at that time it's called Bricktown, and it held 500 people. So I pull up. The guys are like coming to the back door. I go to the back door. I'm like, hey, when do they open the doors? There's like 400 or 500 people standing outside. And they're like, oh, the doors are open. The club is sold out. That's the people that can't get in. And all of a sudden I'm like, oh, damn. Okay, this band is about to go. So we agreed to start managing them. And it was interesting because they started to take off very quickly. They'd Get Stoned, and then Lips of an Angel came out. As Lips of an Angel started to take off, that was becoming a full-time job. So then Nickelback's getting ready to go back out on the road. So I have to go back to the guys and say, hey, I can't go back out on the road. I got this band Hinder. They're blowing up. I'm managing them. I can't come back. And Chad's like, well, that doesn't work for us. And by the way, if they're blown up, then they should come on a tour with us. So then they took him on tour. So for the next 2 years, I was managing Hinder, doing live sound for Nickelback, and tour managing Nickelback.
On the same tour.
On the same tour. And then it's like the record label would be like, hey, we gotta do a video shoot. And I'd be like, okay, we have a day off in between dates in this city. This is where we gotta shoot. So I got away with that for about 2 years. And then all of a sudden the record label was like, guys, this is not, enough of this. Like Hinder was like, now they're ready to like headline and do their own thing.
Yeah.
So it was time. So and the guys could see it. The guys knew they were holding on every day. Like, they're like, you can't keep doing this. Like, you got to go manage Hinder. So like 2007, left and just managed Hinder full time. And then that was the start of my management career, where I'm like, I'm now going to be a manager full time.
So who was after Hinder? Who were some of the next additions to the roster?
You'd be very surprised, but the next one after Hinder was a female. At that time, I think she was 17. She's now Jessie James Decker, but at the time was Jessie James.
No shit.
Yes, and she was a huge rock fan. Is a huge rock fan. Loved Nickelback. Loved Hinder. Loved Puddle of Mud. Like, just a huge rock fan. So her and I got connected through a friend in Nashville, and it's like, hey, you got to meet this girl. Her voice is insane. And we hit it off, started managing, and then almost immediately got her signed to LA Reid and Island in New York.
Wow.
So then I had Hinder, then I had Jessie James, then I had another band called Jet Black Stare. And then once that started, which is really, now we're going to go really random, for about a year, I had Ace Frehley of Kiss when he was making a comeback.
Yeah.
And I also had Jason Newsted on the Newsted Project when he went solo for Metallica.
Yeah.
So I had this like really, really random roster from Hinder to Jessie James to Ace Frehley, Newsted, and Jet Black Stare. So I had these 5 artists. But I loved it. They all, it just ran the gamut of everything. So in the middle of that, I got a call from Live Nation to go and then tour manage the Charlie Sheen Torpedo of Truth tour.
So you did comedy too?
Well, if you want to call it a comedy tour, we don't really know what it was. But I did. I went and did when he just got fired off 2.5 Men.
Yeah, and he was selling out shows.
And he was selling out shows, and nobody knew what the show was, including us. But I did that whole thing with him for 6 weeks. We were doing arenas.
Yeah.
It was crazy.
He was on the back page. He was on the front page of like every newspaper. There was just a crazy buzz. I remember
to this
seeing
day,
that.
It was the craziest experience of my life. There's nothing that'll ever top that. And he's great. He was great, but I'm telling you, that was wild beyond wild. So, it's been a lot.
Yeah, dude. I mean, that's freaking crazy. I knew about the Nickelback and the rock stuff, and then like FGL, but it's like that's nuts to do all that shit.
There's a lot of stuff in the middle.
Where the fuck do you sleep in that? Like, what do you like? I would ask, what do you do in your free time? But you don't have any free time by doing that.
No, look, I think I'm very fortunate where I remember when I was in grade 8 and I bought Def Leppard Pyromania, I think it was. And I heard the record and I just read the credits. I was just enthralled with like the producing and engineering. What's the mastering guy doing? And always enthralled in music. And then I go to like my first concert. I think it was Motley Crue and Whitesnake. And I'm looking at like backstage and I'm looking at how they hung the light and the sound. And I'm like, I was just always enthralled with music. So for me, I think I'm just one of those rare people that actually are thankful that I get to live out my dream. I love my job. I love working with great artists. I love working with talented people in every aspect of what they do, whether you're the drum tech off a tour or the bus driver. I just love every aspect of the business. So it never felt like work. There's been obviously long days and there's times where you wonder why you're doing it, like any job, but I truly am so grateful and thankful to be able to actually live out not only my dream, because I have surpassed what I ever thought the music business, where it would have taken me in my career, where has taken me around the world, people I've met, relationships I've seen, and then being part of history. And whether that's Nickelback or whether it's Hinder or whether it's FGL or now whether it's Bailey or Nate or Josh or always every time you reach another milestone or you're part of something that is changing history and music, I mean, it just never gets old. It just makes you want to keep doing it over and over.
Yeah, and it's cool too, like because you can trace. I always tell people you can trace back modern country music to Nickelback, and I say that, and I cite you, and I cite Joey, and like watching that go. So Nickelback to FGL, and then you don't have FGL without Nickelback. Then you don't have Morgan and Hardy in that train without FGL, because those are the guys that they were.
100%.
That's who they were. People don't know that, and now you see the Bailey Zimmerman just boom, just craziness. Because I remember Bailey's one of his first times playing was at Live Oak, and Austin was playing guitar for him, and he had this tiny little kid with curly hair, fresh out of Illinois, and to see what he's doing now, it's crazy. What was it like transitioning from rock to country? Because there are quite a bit of similarities, but
yeah, look, it was the transition, like let's say business wise and music wise, wasn't. Labels are labels, right?
Yeah.
And you're trying to do the same thing. You're trying to like break an artist and build an artist and market and all that. Where it was really weird at first was not knowing anybody in the country music scene, like nobody. So I remember the first time Joey and I went to CMA Awards, and it's at Bridgestone, and we're backstage, and it's Joey and I, and we're with Craig and Seth, and they know everyone. Everyone in the hall is like, hey, how you doing? Good to see you. Let's catch up. Let's do this. And Joey and I are just standing there. We don't know a single person, like nobody. And you kind of have that moment where it's like, should it actually be here? Like, is this actually the right move? Because we were those people in rock. We knew every label, every programmer, every artist, every tour manager, every manager. We were those people that were highly connected in the rock world. And now we knew nobody. And I think Joe would say the same thing. There were moments like, are we really a fish out of water here? Like, should we really just stick with what we know? Because this seems like this could be tough, But, this town, you meet a couple of people and they introduce you to a couple of people and this and that. And all of a sudden you go for dinner and then you go for another event. And all of a sudden, a year later, by the time we're at the next award show, we're now those people backstage, like, good to see you. How you doing? Let's get, and all of a sudden it happened so quick that you're like, oh, I get why people love Nashville. I get why people love the country music scene. People are very welcoming and friendly. We were used to very, very competitive space.
Yes,
very competitive.
That's the rock world. Yeah.
And especially on touring, like when you tour, it's like, nope, you don't get the video wall. You don't get to use that ramp. You're going to get this row of lights. We're going to turn down your sound. I mean, that was the norm. So I remember the first big tour with FGL was when they were out with Luke Bryan. And we're like, okay, so tell us where we can go, what we can't. And they're like, what do you mean? We're like, well, we see that Luke's got some ramps. He's got a catwalk. And they're like, no, you guys have to use that. And we're like, what? Like, are we gonna get fined? Like, bands would get fined for walking on that, right?
Really?
Wow. It was weird because it wasn't coming from a place of it was always a place less of ego. It was more like, we're paying for that. You know what I mean? Like, this is our show. That ego riser is costing us $5,000 a week. We're paying for that. So why would we give that to you to use for free?
Yeah.
Because we're paying for that. But so it always came from a bit of a place of business. But where we learned with the country is, but the real answer is no, we have to give the fans the best show possible for all of us. And we're all going to win. And it needs to look good for all of us. And the fans go home even happier. So that was a nice, things are a little different in Nashville. And it was a nice change from what the norm that we were used to.
Yeah. And then you get to bring out acts like Morgan Wallen. And to see now that he's one of the biggest things in all of music. And I remember short hair Morgan Wallen wearing an FGL Smooth jersey at Jenks Club in 2016, 2017. And now to see where he's at now, how, like, because were you still working with FGL at that point when he was out on the Smooth tour? Or how did that all happen?
I mean, people forget how big. I mean, now when you tell people, they're like, of course. But at the time, it was FGL, Dan and Shay, Morgan Wallen, Hardy.
Yeah,
that was the lineup. No one knew Hardy. Morgan had The Way I Talk, and then just did Up Down, and then get Dan and Shay and FGL. And FGL was top. And it was interesting because it was one of those tours where you could see it. You could see that Hardy had this thing. Like, he was still figuring out who he was going to be as an artist, but it was working. And then Morgan would go out there and you're like, damn, there's a lot of people here early in the sun to see Morgan Wallen. And then they would bring Morgan out for Up Down at the end of the night. And he just, he had the thing you see, we always call it the X factor, where the confidence, the swagger, he's very comfortable on stage, and knew how to talk to a crowd, knew how to command a crowd, knew how to like perform, and just those things that you just can't teach, and I've been thankful enough to look at all the artists I've got to work with, Chad being one of the greatest, is being a frontman that can just command a crowd.
Dude, there's frontman and there's Chad.
Right?
He's another level.
It's just another level. So when you see that, it was funny because when Nickelback played the show at Bridgestone, Ern came up to me after the show and he goes, I see it. I get what's going on. And I go, what are you talking about? He goes, well, now that I've seen Nickelback, he goes, everything in FGL was Nickelback.
Yeah.
The show, the pyro, the lights, the staging. He goes, I get it. And he goes, and now I'm seeing it all with Bailey. Like, he wants pyro. And he's like, I get it. I now get what it is that you do. And it was when you learn over the years from some of the greats and you get to be around those people, and every time Nickelback got more money, they're like, back in the show. Invest back in yourself. Put it back in yourself. Because if you're thinking long-term and big picture, if you invest now and give people a great show, they're going to want to keep coming back. If you try to save $1,000 here and there, it's like you're only hurting yourself. So I've carried that mentality over with every artist I've ever worked with. And, thankfully it's always worked. And, when you look at a Morgan Wallen show right now, it is a Nickelback show.
Yeah.
It is a bunch of pyro. It is great lighting. It is big. It is all the things that a rock show. It truly is not a country show. And that's what people love.
Yeah.
That's what they want to see. So, yeah, it's kind of fun to see those, what you think are secrets, and to some people they are, but just the gags and part of that make a live show entertaining, that everyone goes home and they're like, that's a damn good show.
Yeah, and it's every artist having their bit, whether that's them or who they want to be on stage, who they want to be on their records, and having that, whether it's their original bit or they're playing in the character, like seeing Chad on stage and seeing the other guys in the band and the interaction and the video wall and like all that, they're kind of the masters of that. And then you've seen that with the other acts too, where
and again, those are a lot of that is like things you can't teach.
No,
you look at a kid like Bailey who's been doing this just over 2 years now. The first show we ever saw him do, we're like, we can't teach that. The fact that he can just walk on stage and run around and look people in the eye and sing people and talk to the people in the back row and make sure the people in the front row aren't ignored, and making sure everybody in an arena or a stadium or a theater, they all feel part of the show. That is really hard to do. And even if you tell somebody, hey, here's some things you need to do, then it becomes robotic. And the fans pick up on that. They're like, are you actually having fun up there? Or are you just going through the motions, or you're trying too hard, or whatever it is? And, again, it's pretty obvious when you see the superstar acts that can sell out stadiums and arenas. They're performers. Like, they know how to put on a show. Like, there's lots of artists that can sing and lots of artists that play great and have great songs. But you go to the show and you're like, I don't need to see him again. Right?
Yeah.
It was fine.
Yep.
It was good. Heard the songs. Everyone sang along. It was fine. Don't need to see him again. And then, whether it's Taylor Swift or Bruno Mars or Pink, where everyone's like, I will go to that show 100 times
Every
before I
time.
die.
Yep.
Every time, because you know what you're getting, and it is a show.
Yeah, and something else with Bailey that something I've kind of picked up on being in the scene for a while. You find guys and girls where the fans start to kind of resemble them. Like you look at a guy like Luke Combs, and Luke Combs and Morgan, it's a little bit easier for them because now Morgan just cut his hair, his signature mullet. But you look at you go to any small town in the Southeast, there's a chubby guy with a beard and a PFG shirt on like Luke Combs. There's that guy with the mullet that's at the bar that the girls want to hang out with. I was at Tailgate and Tall Boys this year, Bloomington, Illinois. And granted, that's Bailey's home turf, his home area. Hundreds of people with the curly hair and the hat. There's it's you can tell that it's working on such a high magnitude when the crowd is resembling the artist. Like, it's incredible.
Look, they'll always. I did a speech in grade 8 at my high school, and I won a contest, which I hated because I hated public speaking back then.
Yeah.
But my speech was on how music influences how we look and dress. And that was in grade 8. And my favorite band was Kiss. So I had like the jean jacket with like the Kiss back patch, you know?
Yeah.
And everybody at school at that time looked like Motley Crue. And, you know, the long hair and all this. And that has not changed. So like you said, whether it's Morgan, whether it's Luke Holmes, whether it's Bailey, is when an act can be so effective and their music's so powerful that people want to look like them or pretend to be them or act like them or dress like them or whatever it is, that's when you really know like you're changing culture. And when you know you're changing culture, you have a real career. Like a real career. Like you kind of gotta you're like, oh, this is happening. And I think for us with Bailey, that's what we noticed is we knew there was talent there. We knew that this kid was, you know, unique and special and different. But when you started seeing, oh, damn, people are dressed up like Bailey. They're cutting their hair like Bailey. Oh, they're only wearing Air Force Ones because Bailey. And then that's when you go, oh, this is going to be big. And, you know, you can see it's blown up very quickly in a short time.
Yeah, and it's just continuing to grow, and him and the guys on stage are just the Bailey show is fucking awesome, man. I saw it at Rock the South as well. I've been fortunate because I used to be on the road with Trey Lewis and then with Muscadine Bloodline, and I spent my time doing the tour manager thing, dealing when buses or vans break down, which I'm sure you've dealt with many a times over the years. But I've gotten to go to a lot of festivals this year. Most of the festivals I've been to, it's been some of your guys playing. Yeah. I've seen Bailey, I've seen Nickelback, I've seen Josh, I've seen Nate, seen all those guys, and it's cool to get to see the roster that you've built over at the Core. So how did the Core end up becoming a thing? Because I know Simon's heavily involved in it with you.
Yeah, look, we were after the Big Loud departure, is literally like COVID hits. You know, and it's kind of like, you know, the world's shutting down. And Simon and I had got connected through a lawyer who represented both of us separately at our companies. And he's like, hey, you guys should get together. You guys think a lot. You know, you guys are very like-minded, think a lot, similar about a lot of things. So him and I, you know, got together. We talked about life, you know what I mean? Just like, what do we want? What's our goals? Our passion for music, our passion for developing new artists, just all the things. And we're very much aligned on everything. So we're like, we should start our own company. And we're like, well, it's during COVID, but look, you can still find artists. You can still develop artists. You can still listen to music and do all the things. You just had to do it a little differently. So him and I were like, well, let's not sit around. Like everyone else is sitting around for good reason, but him and I were like, let's go to Nashville and find some artists. And we went with the attitude of, we want to work with great people. We want to do things the right way. We want to enjoy every artist we work and represent. We want to build a great culture, and we want to find really great, young, talented artists, and then mold them. And I think from Simon's background, from his previous management company, and my background, it's not a perfect science, and we all know that, but there are things that you repeatedly see.
Yeah.
That you go, this is what makes a great song. This is what makes a great artist. This is what makes a great live show. There's just things that you see over and over that work, and then vice versa. You see the mistakes that you go, I understand why that didn't work, you know? And you start to just pick up on those things. And after years and years, you start to get experience where you trust your gut, you trust your ear. It's not always going to be perfect. It's not always going to be 100%, but we both felt confident that we could find the right artist and make some noise. So we did. We very quickly. Nate Smith was our first sign.
He was your first. I was just going to ask who the first sign was, and you talk about a guy with a voice and someone that's impossible to root against. Just the ultimate guy to root for, and that's Nate Smith.
And that was it. Nate was everything we had set out to find. It's like this guy who's got this great story, heartbreaking at times because of his town, but work ethic. Just wanted it. This is his second time, you know, kick at the can, coming back to Nashville.
Yeah.
Unbelievable voice. His passion, you know, everything that you hope you would find in an artist. And maybe you'll find some of the boxes, but Nate truly checked them all. We're like, this will not fail. This cannot miss. And we sat there with Nate and we're like, if you just trust the process, be patient, write the right songs, sing the right songs, put on a great show, it will happen. And it did, you know, and we always say he is our model artist, right? When we go to sign new artists, where it's like, these are the things that work and we know work and we know why, because Nate did them and they worked, you know, and then Josh comes in and he's like, yep, I got it. And then Bailey, you know, we're like, so they all kind of look at each other. They all get along great. They're all like kind of brothers. And they're like, oh, you're doing that? It's working? Well, I can do that, but my way.
Yes.
Or my version of that,
you
know? And when you get that, when you get artists who know who they are and how they want to be branded and the songs they want to sing and how they want to perform a live show, then it makes our job easier. It's now us to just navigate and put the pieces together. So when Bailey comes and says, I want my show to be this and this and this and that, we just go, great, got it. Now we will go and build that show and put the pieces in place. And it makes it so much easier. So thankfully, we've got real artists that have real vision, passion. We got great relationships. They trust us. We trust them. There's lots of debate, lots of arguments, but all always healthy, always with respect.
Yeah.
And look, sometimes the other person's wrong, sometimes the other person's right. But it's kind of what makes it fun, because again, it's not perfect science, but great music, great talent, great voices, and a great work ethic. This is what we always tell all of our artists. You will be successful. We just don't know how big, right? We can't predict how many people are going to listen to your music, how many people are going to buy your tickets, how many people are going to buy your t-shirts. But you will have a fan base. You will have a career. We just do all the right things, and then there's a certain point where it's like, outside of that, we just got to see what happens.
Yeah.
But if you do all the right things, you will have a career.
Yeah, and it's like you talk about having an argument, like having the back and forth. That's because everyone's passionate. Everybody gives a shit. You need to have that. You need to have everybody being mentally, physically, spending their time being invested in this thing for it to work. So you're gonna butt heads every now and again. If you're not, then something doesn't seem right.
You have to, and I think, look, this is just me speaking on my behalf, but you know, there are often times where I look at things, and maybe people feel the same way about us, but I look at whether it's a song or a video or whatever it is that sometimes you see another artist do, and you're like, wait, how did somebody not say something? How did somebody not realize, like, that's just not a good idea, or that's not the right piece of content for that song, you know? And it's art, so everyone has a different opinion, and everyone's obviously entitled and should have different opinions, but that's where it comes to your point where it's like, but there should be a team of people to at least debate it and debate what's right and what's wrong, or what feels like this is going to work or that might not work. And then you ultimately land on a decision, and it might work or might not, but there are definitely times where I'm like, wow, that person really did not have a team of people to look out for
Yeah,
the
it
best
shows.
interest.
It really
does
does.
show. Yeah.
It shows, and even on like an independent level, like all different levels, it shows. And right now, I mean, it's kind of cool. You came into music when it was the album era. It was people going to FYE, going to Tower Records, going to places, and seeing how many physical copies of records. And you got to be with a band that set a bunch of records and milestones with that. And now you're with guys in the streaming era that are breaking records on that stuff. Like
it's crazy
wild
to know that, again, not to try to age myself, but say I've been doing this since 20. So in 30 years, it's crazy to know that, look, there wasn't cell phones back then. When I was a tour manager, it was pay phones. I carried a briefcase with a fax machine.
You were a fax machine
It was
guy.
landlines.
Hell yeah.
And I would show up at the club and call our agent, and he would fax the contract over to whatever number I was like hooked into. And road maps and it wasn't where we're at now. So yeah, it was all about that first week sales. Like, we did 200,000 albums and everyone's like freaking out. And it was like like I said, it was physical CDs, and now it's digital streams, so it's been, again, it's happened kind of so quickly, but when you kind of remove yourself, you're like, damn, music has changed a lot. And 30 years isn't that long of a time from where it was to where it is now. It's kind of crazy. I remember getting my first iPod. I was just like, this is wild.
Was it one of the ones was it one of the colored ones, or was it
No,
just the big? Was it just
the
the class?
it was the all white one.
Oh, the
It was old school with the little wheel on it.
Were you hesitant to go to that to do that? Because I remember, like, I feel like back then there must have been a debate of people wanting, like, having the digital devices versus the
everybody
the CDs
said,
or the vinyls.
To me, it was. And I think this is why the labels took a while to catch up. Is every label said it would never work, but every consumer wanted it. You know what I mean? Every consumer is like, wait, I'm sick of breaking or scratching my CDs. I'm sick of like carrying around a bunch of CDs. You're telling me I could put my songs on. Like, every consumer knew it was going to work. It was the record companies that were like, we can't let this work. Yeah. So, I think everybody wanted it, and they knew it was going to happen. It was inevitable.
Yeah. So when you're not doing music stuff, what do you enjoy doing with yourself? You a big hockey guy, being a Canadian guy?
I am a hockey fan. I'm a sports fan, but honestly, I love golf. It's been interesting to see how very different from when I toured back in the rock and roll days. Days off, we're not going golfing. No. Days off, we can even party more.
Yes.
Because we have a whole day to do whatever we want.
Best party city to go to back in the day.
Oh,
you went everywhere. You went all over the world.
I mean, the best place to party was Australia.
Really?
Just crazy.
They just didn't care. They were just having fun.
Their clubs were open 24 hours, nonstop.
No shit.
Yeah, you could go there anytime and just party your face off. So we loved going to Australia. Look, the small towns were always like crazy, because a band like Nickelback would roll in and you see trucks and buses, and all of a sudden the clubs are like, come on, free booze, come on in, bring the crew, bring everyone. So the small towns are always amazing. And it was fun. But look, now, things are different. You gotta take care of yourself when you're touring. You gotta, you can't afford to cancel shows. And there's also like the expectations have changed. So I think for the artist, and there's a lot of stress. Like, if you think back then, there's no cell phones, right? Which means there's no social media, and there's not all that madness that now comes with it. There's so much stress on all these artists from social media and TikTok and posting, and then you got to write, and then you got to perform, and then you got to tour, and then you got to do videos, and it's like, and you got to do radio, and it's nonstop. That I think artists are like, where's my break? And golf has become that for a lot of artists, where they go, I can just go smack a ball on a course for 3, 4, 5 hours. Put the phone
on, do not disturb, or turn it off in the cart. Yeah.
There's no fans on the golf course.
Yeah.
You can have some drinks and just relax.
Yeah.
And actually, like, you can enjoy the day, you can enjoy the weather, you can actually chill with your friends, you can just be kind of normal. So it's weird how, especially in country music, it's become Hardy golfs, Bailey golfs, Aaron golfs, Nate golfs. Morgan golfs. You know what I mean? Like when we get a day off or even a show day, everyone's like, hey, should we go golf for 9 holes and get out of here and like take a break? So golf.
Yeah, the rider changes.
The rider
is very different.
changes.
The rider goes from bottles and bottles and bottles to, hey, can I get a 9 o'clock tee time?
That's exactly what it is. It's like, hey, call the local promoter and can I get on? TR is a big golfer.
Yeah.
You know, the FGL guys are golf. I mean, almost everyone golfs. And it's also like, it's become a real cool way for the artist to be able to spend time outside of the craziness. Like, let's just go on the golf course and hang out for 3 hours with nobody else around and talk about family and relationships and the music business and whatever it is. And it's just their own time. And you just don't get that. You don't get that in Nashville and you don't get that on the road.
No.
So it's great. I think everyone's really likes it for that reason.
Do you have a favorite course here in Nashville? Because I'm assuming you're getting after the links while you're out
I
here.
just got to play Troubadour.
How was that? That place looks awesome.
Phenomenal.
It looks
It's
state of the art.
I haven't done every course in town, but I would say that is probably the best course in town.
Yeah.
I don't think there's anything better than that course.
Yeah.
It was ridiculous. We had a great time.
Yeah, I've heard nothing but good things about that place. Because I played golf like growing up. I'm not great at it. I played it a lot during COVID because there wasn't a whole lot going on.
Exactly.
It was hanging out at house parties, sitting around the fire playing guitar, and then going and playing golf. But like, I know like Old Hickory, and then there's the Hermitage, and there's so many freaking golf courses around here. Yeah. But also when you're on the road, every town has a golf course.
You can find a golf course everywhere now. And look, when you now start getting at the Bailey levels and the Hardy and the Morgan, there is not a course that you can't get on.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden you're like, wait, that's a members only course. I could never, ever golf. Now they're like, no, you guys can come. No problem. So there's some perks to, being able to golf some nice courses.
Yeah. Who's your hockey team? If you can, you're rooting for the Predators yet?
No.
I was gonna say, I figured you wouldn't.
Very randomly, even though I grew up in Calgary, Alberta, my hockey team is the New York Islanders because when I started watching hockey at a young age, New York Islanders were the team. They're the dynasty. So I was like, Mike Bossy became my favorite player. And I'm just watching this team year after year after year after year, just like win. And I'm like, this team is unbelievable. Obviously, they're not that team now, but I love them. I still stick with them. So I'm a diehard Islanders.
Yeah, I'm sure you've got to do a show at the Coliseum then back in the day.
Oh, yeah.
What was that like walking in that arena for the first time
as
an Islanders fan, but for work?
I mean, we got to meet. I got to meet Mike Bossy that day. Like the alumni were there, and it was amazing. It was like I'm looking at my childhood hockey heroes, and and now it's continued. Every hockey player is diehard music fans. They love Morgan. They love Nickelback. They love Bailey. So even at Boots and Hearts a couple of days ago, like Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl are like at the show.
No shit.
All Connor McDavid wanted to do was meet Bailey. And it's like, I had to go up to Bailey and be like, hey, this is Connor McDavid. He's the greatest hockey player in the world right now. And then Connor comes over and says hi, and Bailey just looks at me and goes, I'm not a hockey fan, bro. I'm so sorry. My manager just said you're the greatest hockey player in the world. I have no idea. I've never seen you play. I'm going to look you up. I'm going to do my homework. But I just got to be honest with you. I have no idea who you are. And Connor loved it. Loved it. Connor's like, I love it. And he's a great guy. But so we're going to try to get Bailey to be a hockey fan here.
Yeah. I mean, the hockey culture here in Nashville for a southern city is fucking awesome.
No, it's massive. It rivals most Canadian cities. It really does.
Great.
Yeah, people are like real fans here. And look, the team's great. I've gotten to go to a lot of games here. It's fun. It's a blast.
A game at Bridgestone Arena, the crowds are all, maybe it's because it's Nashville, but everybody's in kind of in sync and harmonizing on their
concert.
chants. Yeah.
It's a real event. They actually make an event. So yeah, I love it. I love hockey.
Then as a Canadian, Trailer Park Boys or Letterkenny? I feel like you'd be a Trailer Park Boys guy.
Trailer Park Boys, only because and I do love Letterkenny, and some of those guys are so funny. But, Trailer Park Boys was like the beginning of that.
Yeah.
That was the show that when it came out, everyone was like, oh, this shit's funny. And taking all the shots at Canadians in such a funny way that it was great.
You had to have met those guys at some point,
Oh,
right?
yeah. Well, what a lot of people don't know is I'm going to forget his name now. What was the character with the glasses?
Bubbles.
Bubbles. Bubbles was in a rock band called Sandbox. And Sandbox was actually a pretty big Canadian act at the time.
Really?
So I had known Bubbles through that band.
No shit.
Yeah.
So you knew him like the actual actor.
I knew him I knew him when he was playing in the band. I didn't actually know he was an actor until Trailer Park Boys came out, and then you're like, oh, you actually can act. So it was very random, very random. But yeah, they're just all incredibly funny guys. And the funny thing about that show and Letterkenny is like, it's not really acting. It's like some of those guys are like, oh, this is who you are.
Yeah.
Like this is just, you grew up like this. Your friends are like this. This is your life. I mean, that's why the show was so big and successful, because it was like watching reality TV.
Yeah.
It wasn't like that far off.
We all know DJs from up country. People go fishing in Quebec. Like, it's like,
we all know those guys. Everyone's like, I got a friend just like him.
Yeah.
Every single person's like, yep, I know that guy.
That's freaking awesome. I've never been to Canada. If I were to go to a Canadian city, which one should I go to first?
Well, look, I'm going to be a little biased because I also still live in Vancouver, but Vancouver has, we always say Vancouver is like San Francisco and Toronto's like New York, right? So it just depends what you're looking for. But look, we have ocean, we have mountains, we have Whistler, we have skiing, we have hiking. Whistler's one of the greatest ski mountains and villages in the world. So the fishing, the hiking, the skiing, all that part is incredible. And in one day, you can go ski up in the mountains and drive 2 hours down and you're suntanning on the beach, So our summers are phenomenal. It's one of the best cities in the world. And, we got the food and all that stuff too. Toronto is just completely opposite. It's like New York. It's big city. You've got all the big city things. You've got Major League Baseball team. Yep. You got an NBA team. We don't have either. You know what I mean? You've got the shows and the nightlife, which is much bigger and more prominent in Toronto. And then you can go up north and you've got lakes, where we have the ocean. Toronto's lakes, and they have, again, beautiful cottage country. They say it's like the Hamptons.
Yeah.
So it just depends what you're looking for. But I mean, beauty, nothing really tops Vancouver, truly.
Okay. That's good to know. Yeah, I've never been out Pacific Northwest in general,
It's
so I feel like I got to
incredible.
get out there.
It's really incredible.
Check that out. That's awesome, man. Favorite spots here in Nashville? Because you spend a lot of time here now, and you have for a long time, and you've seen this city change. Like around the time that FGL was really getting going was when Nashville was starting to have its big freaking boom.
Yeah.
What are some of your like hangout spots you like to go to here?
I mean, look, if you ever want to find me outside of work, I'll be at Hall's Steakhouse.
Oh, Hall's got my girlfriend's a big Hall's fan because she's from Charleston, which is where they're based out of.
I am obsessed with that restaurant. They I had all the Nickelback guys in there the night before the show. We've done mini dinners there with. We were laughing. There's one night a couple of weeks ago. We're all leaving work, and we're all like, "What are you doing tonight?" And Tracy's like, "Oh, I'm going to Hall's for dinner." And I'm like, "Oh, Simon and I are going there for dinner." And then we go there and like Josh is there with like his family for dinner. And then we look around the corner and I'm like, "Oh, there's Bailey for dinner." Like we're just obsessed with that place. The food's incredible. The service is amazing. So we love hanging out there. And then, outside of that, it's Red Door and winners and losers and
Red Door guy, yes.
all the go-to where you're like, you walk in and it's like Cheers. It's like you see all the same faces. And it's always a good time.
Yeah, Red Door is one of those spots where I've had more business come out of Red Door in my career from just sitting and hanging with folks in the smoking section at Red Door on that little patio than I have in any conference room or anything like that. That to me is just the Nashville networking is being out at a bar.
And look, there's
Monday
also
and
some
Tuesday.
days it's like we can't get our artist on the phone and we go to Red Door and like, oh,
There he is.
hey buddy, how are you doing? Good to see you. Where you been all day? No, it's just a great hang. It's a great hang.
It is a great hang. So what are some things for people to look forward to as far as your core artists? I know the grind never stops, and the tour's still going on right now.
Yeah, we've got. I mean, we're really excited. We can't fully announce it yet, but Bailey's got a big year of touring coming next year. Nate's got a big year of touring. Josh has a big year of touring. Nickelback is going to be on some soon to be announced big country festivals. We're gonna keep that train going, like the Boots and Hearts and the Tailgates and Tallboys.
I love that, dude.
There's gonna be some great things coming from them next year, and then at the core, we're launching a producer division that we're going to announce in the next couple of weeks.
That's
we
awesome.
just announced Core Records.
Yeah,
Universal.
which Universal. That's full circle for you too, man.
Full
it
circle.
all comes around.
It's all coming around. We got some exciting new artists that we are working on to get signed and get announced. We got a new project that we're putting together. I mean, we're just going. I mean, we love it, and we're using all this momentum we have to just keep it going, keep growing, and just keep having fun. We just want to we have our staff is young and hungry.
Yes, I'm
and
a
phenomenal.
Your staff is Macy, Kenzie,
all of them just
great,
incredible.
Yeah.
They all get along and they just hustle. And then we got our little secret weapon, and not so secret anymore, and Tracy Martin, who's our president, who is just crushes everything she touches. So we're just excited about everything coming down the pipeline.
That's awesome, man, dude. It's been cool getting to watch the core coming out of COVID, and we've done the events with you guys before. I'd love to do another one. As
honestly,
things
we
keep
were just talking about it. We were just talking about doing it. Dylan James finally is getting ready to release new music.
Let's go.
And so studio's done. I think new music is coming out in September. So, this kid's just been on a grind for 3 years, and we preach to all of our artists that everyone's journey is different, everyone's timeline is different. So it's hard sometimes when you see a kid like Bailey come and go so fast, but it doesn't mean that that's not going to happen to you. It just means your timing is different. So Dylan is just patient and worked hard, and probably this guy's been in the studio and probably written hundreds of songs, and now he's got a body work that he is proud of, and he now looks back and sees it. He's like, I wasn't ready a year ago. I wasn't ready 6 months ago. I am now ready.
Hell yeah.
So we're excited about that, and we're just going to keep trying to take over.
Yeah, we would love.
We love it.
Takeovers. We'd love to do a core takeover.
We're
one
down.
of our Raised Rowdy events, man.
We are ready to do another
Let's
one.
do
We
it.
literally talked about it last week.
Hell yeah. Well, that sounds freaking awesome, dude. I really appreciate you coming on and
thanks
and
for
hanging,
having me.
man. You're a guy I look up to in the business, and someone that it's cool to get to sit down and
I really appreciate
shoot the
that,
shit
man.
and hear your story, man. For real. It was fucking awesome.
I've just been thankful and lucky at times and all the things, but just try to treat people good, work hard, do the right things. Hope it works out.
That's what it's all about. Well, guys, thank you for watching this episode of Outside the Round. Be sure to check out the Core Entertainment Management label. There's a record label. What's the official title? Like, what is the
Well, it's the Core Entertainment.
The Core Entertainment.
And then everything, management, records, producer, all falls under that.
Awesome. Well, y'all be sure to check out our man Chief, all the artists that he works with, and all the big things that the Core Entertainment has coming up in the future. A lot of big things coming to follow up what has been an incredible 2023 and finishing out this year. Appreciate y'all tuning in. Shout out to our friends from Big Friendly Productions, Saxman Studios, of course, Whale Tail Media, and our boy Mitch Wallace with the Digital Marketing Agency. For my man Chief, Burrill, sweet boy behind the camera, my name is Matt Burrill, and this has been Outside the Round.
I ain't never been the kind for staying in one place for too long. I ain't never been the best at saying I love you to a girl I love. Only got a couple tricks on my sleeve. They usually just make them leave.